Hey, how is everyone doing? I've got some good news for, I think, a lot of you. Rents have turned negative year over year. Now, this is the first time since prior to the 2020 health crisis that rents are lower than they were the year before. Now, this is a national average, so it's not in every city. But when you look at all the larger cities that are looked at when it comes to this particular metric, prices are down compared to last year. So, this is some good news. We talked about how many times we talked about how the rental moratoriums were causing prices to remain elevated and making rents unusually high for many years. The last few years, I'm sure many of you have noticed just the skyrocketing rents, and that's because of a lot of things. We've broken them down here on this channel, but let me just give you a briefing. All of the cancellations of the rents, the eviction moratoriums, all of the programs, the 60% of our dollars that were printed just in the past 3 years, right? Just a monster amount of money printing. And that created a false economic boom. And it allowed people to keep their jobs in some cases that normally the businesses would have closed down. We had the PPP loans, what were they? Paycheck protection loans, enhanced unemployment benefits, stimulus checks. People didn't have to pay their student loans for 3 years now. That's finally coming to an end, right? So things are changing, things are turning here in the second half of 2023 as predicted. But let's go to the latest rental data here. I've got some nice charts here for you today. So let's start off right here at apartment list. And what this chart gives us is three different colored lines. And this gives you the trajectory here of rents. And if you look at the most recent here, July of this year, 2023, we're down 0.7% compared to the year before. Now, the one we want to focus on is the purple one because that is the apartment list national rent index. The red and the um, blue color there, those are CPI index and top line CPI. So let's focus on the purple one, down 0.7%. Not a lot, of course, but if you look at where rents came from, I mean, we had at one point 18% year over year rent growth, and you can see the years listed at the bottom. Of course, that was going out of 2020, coming into 2021, all the way into the beginning of 2022. Even going into the beginning of 2022, rents were still up 10% year over year. So finally, people are starting to see some relief. Now, we've been saying here for over a year that the second half of 2023 is going to be where we're going to start seeing some big changes and finally some price corrections. And right on target, what are we seeing now? We're seeing vehicle prices falling, we're seeing rents now negative year over year. And it was pretty easy to see. We saw the trajectory of credit card debt. It only is a matter of time when people have this amount of debt and when their savings are so low that people can continue to afford to pay these high rents. And rents are a good indicator of the economy because it has to do with monthly cash flow, unlike the housing market or just home prices in general, where home prices can be bid up by borrowed money, right? It's rarely borrowed money that's paying the rent. It's usually money that's in the bank, in the checking account, right? Unless someone's robbing Peter to pay Paul to pay for rent, like maybe running up credit cards or taking out equity lines of credit from one home to pay rent on another, or credit card cash advances, crazy stuff like that. But barring those things, 99% of the time, it's probably 99.9, it's people's cash that they have in their account, writing a check, so to speak, to their landlord for their rent. All right, so it's a better indicator of actual cash available to consumers versus, again, people borrowing money and just taking on debt to buy a house or pay the mortgage. And where rents go, housing follows. So now we're going to see home prices, I think, really start to soften here going into the later part of this year. And again, we predicted that last year that the second half of 2023 is going to be, the time frame. Now, typically, I don't like to put time frames out there because so many things could change. Next week, they could announce another cancellation of rent. They could announce another foreclosure moratorium. Nobody knows. So that's why I try not to make predictions. But it is interesting when you put out a general timeline, how accurate we can be. if things are allowed to naturally correct where they should go. Now, true price discovery, in my opinion, means that home prices have to fall over 50%, a lot more than that, but over 50% is a start. Rents have to drop 50% because of all the jobs out there right now that are only there because of people taking on enormous amounts of debt. When people run up tons of debt, it creates jobs. And when that starts slowing down, when people can't run up debt like they used to, when people are not able to pay a 20 something percent interest rate on their credit card, so they have to slow down on their spending, then you start to see that affect the overall economy and jobs, and therefore more job losses, more layoffs. And of course, we're seeing a ton of that here in 2023. So naturally, rents are correcting at this point. Also, we're starting to see vacancies take a big uptick here. So it got as low, vacancies got low, the vacancy rate, also known as, got as low as about 4.1%. That was October 2021. We could see that going into 2020, it was about under 7%. It hit 7.2% in June 2020. If you remember, that was the onset of the health crisis. Things went crazy. Vacancies really dropped, but now we're up to 7.3% as of July. So, what does that mean? More vacancies, more people moving out of their apartments, not renewing their leases. Where are they going? Maybe back home with their parents, maybe moving in with other family members, maybe getting roommates, moving somewhere else. But the bottom line is vacancies are increasing and rents are now negative year over year. So for those of you out there that said there was no hope, that things are never going to become more affordable, we're never going to see falling prices or deflation, here's another area where we're starting to see just a little bit of relief. Now it's just 0.7%, so it's not a huge relief as of yet, but we're going into the fall and the winter here in just a few months. So we're going to see, I think, prices take a bigger correction as far as rents go, and I think as far as home prices go as well. Remember, when rents are high, it forces people to buy, and vice versa. When home prices are high, it forces people to rent. So one can affect the other. In this case, rents are coming down along with home prices. Now, at the beginning, I said this was overall when you take an average of all the different cities. And they look here, Apartment List looks at the 100 largest cities. And if we look at the number of cities that have the year over year decrease, also known as negative year over year rent growth, that is 67 of the 100 largest cities are negative year over year. And as this chart points out, the biggest drop was Boise, Idaho, with nearly 7% year over year decline in rents. That was one city that saw a big influx of people from California. And I talked to a lot of people that are amazed at how high prices are and how people are able to get by. And one of the biggest questions out there is, how are people affording these things? How are people getting by? Well, if you look at the big picture, it's based on debt. We have a record amount of people pulling money out of their 401ks right now, robbing from their future so-called retirement savings, which is really not going to be enough to retire when you look at this type of cost of living. So it is good news when we see even a little bit of a price correction here in rents, but will it continue, or will something happen to justify more of what we saw in 2020 where they cancel payments and therefore rents explode? Now, some of the biggest problem areas as far as unaffordable rent has been in the bigger cities, and that's where most of the jobs are concentrated. That's why it was kind of nice to see more companies do the work at home thing. The reason why they did the work at home thing, that wasn't so nice with the health crisis, but people found out that they do love working from home, and companies found out that um, the production that you get out of your workers, even when they're working at home, can still be pretty good, because a lot of times it's things that you can just monitor through the computer. You can tell if they're at their computer, if they're talking to people, if they're doing their job, if they're active, on there. It can all be monitored via computer systems. But we've seen some companies want to encourage and even force their employees back to the office, especially some of the tech companies. And that's not good, because when you can work at home, then you can have more freedom to move somewhere. In our last report, we talked about how cheap it is in some states. The cheapest home prices are in West Virginia, Oklahoma, Louisiana, couple other southern states. Mississippi was another one. So when you have freedom to roam about the country, you can then pick a more affordable place to live. When everybody's packed into a city because that's where the jobs are, that's when you see the biggest problems. And we see New York City, the rents are outrageous, right? So let's hear from some people. Here's something I've been doing more lately is playing clips of people talking about the topics that we cover here. And so let's hear from a few people about how they feel as far as their rents, the cost of rents, and their rent increases. Remember, it's only 60 what something cities out of 100 that are seeing negative rent growth. So that means a lot of cities are still seeing rent increases, unfortunately. All right, so here's someone that describes their landlord as playing chicken with them. Chicken meaning they're going to try to raise the rent, but then if there's any pushback, they'll say, "Oh, we don't have to raise the rent." That's what it sounds like. Take a listen to this here.
My rent was $1,700 a month for a 1 bedroom. And then I got a notice that it was going up to $2,200. So I said, peace, see ya, I'm not doing this. And then I get a call that's like, oh, was that price the problem? Like, we can fix that. And I'm like, were you playing chicken with my rent? Why would you? Peace, done.
So if she's being honest, that's a big increase from 1,700 to 2,200. That's like, wow, that's almost unbelievable. Is she being honest? Hopefully this is a real story. But if it is true, then that's very shady of the landlord to do that. To come back and say, "Oh, is it the price? Is it the price? To come back and say, is it the price that's making you want to move out?" According to her, she still said, "Peace, I'm moving out." Is there a lot of other cheaper options though where she lives? So is she being honest, or did she just put this out there to show off her makeup and show off her nose ring? No, I don't know. But this is what people out there are saying. Let's listen to a few more here, individuals. Now let's take a listen to someone else that's pretty fed up with the cost of living, especially rents here. Let's take a listen.
I'm honestly so upset. Living in America is freaking ridiculous right now. There are people choosing whether they want to have Christmas gifts or pay their rent, and that might not be different from any other year. 2 to 3 grand on average. You need to make 2 to 3 times that. 9,000 a month. How many people with regular bachelor degrees are even making that? No one. Not a lot of people. No one wants to live with roommates. That's not the answer. Everybody deserves a safe and clean space. There's no reason why so many people should be roommating, or you can't even buy yourself your own house. It's not, this is horrible.
This is how a lot of people feel. You have to get a bunch of roommates. It's not the greatest when you have a bunch of roommates, especially ones that don't clean up after themselves. I've been there, done that, unfortunately. I was always the clean one. I was always the clean roommate. I always cleaned up after myself, except for that one time where I hid the cheesecake in the cupboard and then ants and roaches started moving into the apartment. That was the only time it was dirty, though. Other than that, I was very clean. So I could see her point. I mean, she's talking about landlords require 3 times income versus how much your rent is. So if rent is 2,000, you need to make 6,000 a month. That's pretty astronomical, especially for a young person or someone just getting out of college. Now, here's an example of how outrageous some of the fees are, specifically late fees from property managers when somebody is late on their rent. Take a listen to this and listen to what this person says.
This is the America that we live in. I've been living at my apartment for a year now. I re-signed my lease last month, and I'm on to a new journey to stay at this place for another year. I've been a really good tenant. I've never paid late. I've never had to pay a late fee because I just always paid on time. Knowing that I have a good track record, you would think that these places would be a little bit more lenient or give you a pass if you're short or you're going through a financial hardship. But no, hold on. So I had my full rent, except I had it on 2 cards. The system that they use will not allow me to do a partial payment. So I'm like, all right, whatever, cool. I have the bulk of the money, but I was going to be short $100. So in my head, I'm like, okay, just add that to next month's bill.
In her head, she was short $100, so they should just add it to next month's bill. It's not the way landlords usually do it, especially corporate landlords. Maybe if you're renting from Aunt May and Aunt Nellie down the street, or Uncle Joe, Aunt Nellie, whatever. Uh, but if it's a big corporation, if it's a typical landlord, they're going to charge you a late fee. And listen to this.
It shouldn't be a problem. No, these apartment complexes are extremely predatory. So now I'm late, I'm asked out, and I don't know what to do. They gave me a notice on my door on the 8th that was dated for the 7th, so that was off. And then the guy is going to tell me, like, well, you have to pay it by the end of the day today. I'm like, well, can I do a partial payment? He's like, no. So they sent me this letter talking about 3-day possession, da 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 da. Then I get a notice on my door today talking about I have to pay an additional $150 for a late fee and then $250 to stop the house from me being evicted.
Wow, $150 late fee and then another $250 on top of that to stop the eviction, right? So it had to be in the contract, right? I hope she read her contract. Hopefully the landlord's not just throwing that in there. Pretty crazy.
What I don't understand is that if a person doesn't have the full amount, they have a good track record with you, why would you tack on an additional $400? Don't you think if I had it, I would have gave it to you? It's frustrating. These laws, these leases, they're mad predatory. And I see why a lot of people end up homeless, evicted, or whatever, because it's like, bro, we're all living check to check. And then for you to add on more fees because someone couldn't pay is asinine.
Right. So she has a few questions in there and a few concerns. Why are landlords allowed to do this? Well, it's pretty simple. They have the leverage. You need a roof over your head, and most landlords take advantage of that. They're going to charge you a late fee. They're going to charge you as much as they can get away with, because they know that people don't want to be homeless. They're benefiting from survival, basically. Right? You don't want to be in the street. So I think that's the simple answer. I think it's greed. I think it's leverage. Some people wouldn't even call it greed. Some people would just call that business. You want to make as much money as possible. And if that happens to hurt somebody else that's less fortunate, then, a lot of people out there just say that's business. But is she right? I mean, do you agree with her on any of her points? And don't ask her how much she paid for the hairstyle, the nails, the jewelry. Even if she wouldn't have gotten any of those things, she still would have been short on rent, I have a feeling. And pretty much you can say that about anything. If I couldn't afford my housing payment, you could say, why did I buy this bookshelf? Why did I buy this keyboard? Why did I buy this salt lamp? So we don't want to go there. All right, one more here. Earlier in this video, we talked about how big cities like New York, for example, are the worst for rents. Also, LA is pretty bad, but here's someone in New York opening up their letter from their property manager slash landlord, seeing how much extra they're going to have to pay here. Take a listen.
I'm about to find out how much they're raising the rent on my New York City apartment. I have been dreading this because I love my apartment. Look at it. It is a mess right now, but I would love to be able to finish decorating it. It is mostly done. I did everything in like 3 to 4 months and then I got tired, so I stopped, but I would love to finish, I haven't been sure how much they're going to raise the rent by because it's been all over the place, not only in my building, but just in Manhattan in general. This is me realizing that they didn't actually list any of the numbers on the first page. I live in a studio on the Upper West Side, and I have an outdoor space, so I pay a pretty penny. I definitely pay more than I realistically should, but I was still hoping they wouldn't raise it that much though, but they're raising it by $325, $375 if I sign after August 10th, and that's lower than what other people have gone through, I know, but still, I don't know. I'm about to
$325 a month increase. That is insane. I'm surprised she wasn't crying. That's a lot for a lot of people. That's crazy. $325 a month for 12 months. That's like almost $4,000 a year. I think it's just under $4,000. Who is getting a raise of $4,000 a year, especially someone making, between 50 and 100,000? That is a lot of money. How are people doing it? Please let me know what you think down in comments. Also, thank you to all of you watching right now, to all my subscribers, and everyone, especially everyone that supported this channel and helped keep me operational here, helped me keep going. Because this sort of a thing where you're putting out videos, it can be hit or miss. You might have a channel that takes off. There's people talking about home prices crashing that have been completely wrong for several years and get tons of views, talking millions of views. Me, not so much. I try to be honest. I try to tell the truth here and give you real analysis and not try to clickbait and not make give people false hopes and tell people home prices were going to crash, like some channels have been telling people. So I think a lot of you appreciate that, and that's why you come back to the channel, even though I haven't really been promoted that much or, pushed out there to a very big audience. So I really appreciate your support, and especially to the following people that have given me some super thanks and some tips here recently. Thank you to the following viewers. Silver Dragon 7160, thank you for the tip. YWT Emma, thank you very much for your kind tip and support. And I'm not sure how to pronounce this other screen name. DRYDE is at Deardy. Deardy85, thank you very much. Sorry if I butchered your name. And DJ Jojo, thank you very much, DJ Jojo. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you down in the comments on this one. What do you think about the declining rents down year over year now for the first time in over 3 years? Are we going to see bigger corrections going into the end of the year? Or will the powers that be step in and prevent prices from correcting and put out a bunch of rescue programs because things are going to fall apart so quickly? Either way, it's going to be interesting. Also, what do you think about the clips there from those people? Some people are really struggling, really getting nailed in these rents, especially people in bigger cities, New York City especially. Anyways, we're out of here. Thanks everybody. Keep stacking big love. Bye for now.